All right, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. We've already covered a little bit about what's going to be mentioned in this module on mitochondrial support and brain endurance, but we're going to go deeper in this module because through taking the quiz, you've identified that this is the primary issue with your brain and the area that needs the most support. The goal here is to restore cellular energy production to help you eliminate brain fog and mental fatigue. So let's get into how we can help you support your mitochondria. So we're going to talk more about how your brain creates and uses energy. We're going to talk about some of the causes of brain fog and mental fatigue. We'll give you some suggestions on how to stabilize your blood sugar and support mitochondrial function. And then we'll give you some ideas on how to create a personalized plan for lasting brain endurance. So the brain is hungry. It makes up a small amount of the mass of the body, but it consumes a huge amount of the body's energy. 20, 25, 35% of your body's total energy, making it the most demanding organ in the entire body. The brain never rests. It's working 24/7. It's working while you're asleep. Some organs go to sleep, but the brain is not one of them. And the brain is, because it's consuming so much of your energy, its function decreases when you don't have enough energy production. So let's look at some of the control centers that are affecting the brain. So we've got the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and the brainstem. So the hypothalamus is really kind of the master gland of the entire body. And primarily what the hypothalamus does is it secretes hormones that then go into the pituitary, either the anterior or posterior pituitary. And then the pituitary either secretes specific hormones based on the signals it got from the hypothalamus, or the pituitary secretes other signaling molecules to affect other glands in the body. So this is an extremely important gland and really has wide-ranging effects on the body. We also have the hippocampus, which is inside the brain. It's in the insula in the brain underneath the temporal cortex. And as we talked about before, the hippocampus has a lot to do with memory and recall and learning. And so, it's also an extremely important area of the brain. And last is the brain stem, which we've also touched on briefly. The brain stem is, in a way, is what keeps us alive. It's governing all of those autonomic or automatic functions in the body and ensuring that they're moving the way that they're supposed to. And so these are all kind of working together to support the brain, to ensure that the brain functions well, especially in terms of the energy supply of the brain. The hippocampus deals with the circadian rhythms. The hypothalamus deals with the thyroid gland and metabolism, and the brainstem deals with these autonomic functions, automatic functions. And so they're all kind of involved in energy production and determining where the energy goes in the body. And so when there is any sort of damage to the cells in the brain or any of the nervous system cells, then these systems kind of go into overdrive in order to either repair that damage which also has to do with the immune system, but to produce the energy to ensure that damage doesn't cause long-term complications for the body. So this, when there is this damage, there's an increased need for blood sugar. And so the body may crave glucose or need a higher glucose uh, demand. And this can cause spikes in blood sugar, or if the brain is consuming too much of the sugar, then it can create drops in blood sugar. And so, as we talked about before, blood sugar stability is a key ingredient in brain cell health. So, if you're having these spikes or valleys in blood sugar, then that can cause problems. So, that's kind of the first stage of the brain's energy crisis. And then we're going to revisit the mitochondria. As was mentioned earlier, the mitochondria are the primary organelles in the cell that produce energy in the form of ATP. And so the higher density you have of mitochondria, or the more healthy your mitochondria are, the more efficient you are at producing energy. And energy is the key ingredient in brain health. So if you don't have enough energy, some of the things you may be experiencing, and probably the reason you're even watching this lecture or in this class, is because you have brain fog, mental fatigue, difficulty with memory and focus, or afternoon crashes after eating, and you require caffeine or sugar to get through your day. So we've discussed the importance of glucose. We've discussed the importance of having a steady energy supply. I did mention in the previous module that there are other things besides glucose that can produce energy. Ketone bodies can also do this. So there is an approach where you would focus more on that, but we're primarily focused on balancing the blood sugar, balancing the glucose in the bloodstream, making sure that the blood sugar is not too high or too low. If this does happen, your brain does have some backup systems to utilize, but overall, we want to stabilize the blood sugar as much as possible. So there's two kind of primary blood sugar imbalances that we're looking at. One is functional hypoglycemia, and the other is insulin resistance or high blood sugar. So functional hypoglycemia, hypo is low, glycemia is blood sugar. So this is basically low blood sugar. When you don't have enough sugar in your blood, or the sugar in your blood isn't being utilized in the way that it needs to be utilized. There could be symptoms of shakiness, irritability, afternoon crashes, sugar cravings, and this is often caused by not eating often enough, or skipping meals, or not eating enough at the meal, or eating foods that aren't easily absorbed, or having some other issues with your digestive system so that you're not absorbing the nutrients and calories from the food to be able to utilize. Sometimes it can happen from excess caffeine, because that can be an appetite suppressant. So there's also insulin resistance. And so insulin resistance is when your blood sugar is too high over a long period of time. And so the insulin basically is a hormone that is utilized or used to utilize the sugar. So it goes into the bloodstream and tells you to absorb the sugar in the bloodstream and utilize that. So in high blood sugar, you have a lot of sugar in your blood, because that sugar is not going to where it's supposed to be. The glucose isn't going to the areas of the body that need it, like the brain. So it remains high in the blood. So you may feel unrefreshed. You might have sugar cravings because you're, needing that glucose, but it's not getting into the cells where it's needed. You might feel fatigue. And physical activity actually helps you utilize the glucose in your blood. Stress can arrest your body's ability to pick up that glucose from the blood and utilize the insulin. And then, of course, inflammatory conditions can cause problems as well. So these are the primary ones. I mentioned earlier a continual glucose monitor can be really helpful, so you can map out the specific problems that you might be having. So, you know, because the brain consumes so much of the energy of the body, if the brain is not getting the energy that it needs, that often can impair glucose control, since the brain is basically the control center and kind of telling your body what to do. So when this happens, your body will often use stress hormones to try and recalibrate things. The stress hormones like cortisol do increase blood sugar, or tell your body to get the glycogen or the glucose out of certain tissues, muscles, liver, that sort of thing. But the long-term effect of unstable blood sugar is mitochondrial damage, and you're not producing the amount of energy that you need, compromises to the blood-brain barrier, and this can accelerate neurodegeneration. So we want to ensure that our blood sugar is as balanced as possible. This primarily has to do with food. That's why in the first module, we really discussed food in detail and strategies for managing your blood sugar. We've talked about inflammation, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into neuroinflammation. So, first, inflammation is a normal and natural response of the body to damage. Anytime there is damage, the body has an immune response, and that immune response is inflammation. So really what we're talking about here is chronic inflammation. So instead of an immune response that lasts 2 to 5 days, we're talking about an immune response that doesn't turn off, and the body continues to produce inflammation, or there's other factors going on that perpetuate that inflammation. And so the microglia are the brain's immune cells. They're the ones that are producing this inflammation, and they also consume a huge amount of glucose in order to do their job. And sometimes they can go into a condition that we call glial priming, where those immune cells in the brain just don't turn off. And so we need to implement strategies that help those immune cells to turn off or to reduce the inflammation in that area, because that chronic inflammation is really bad for the brain. So here's a few strategies or a few things that we try and avoid or minimize as much as possible in order to get control of this inflammation. So high blood sugar, primarily from eating, sugar-rich foods. Food sensitivities, gluten, dairy, eggs are the top 3. You may do an allergy test to see if you have other food sensitivities. Processed foods, because many of the ingredients and processed foods the body can't actually digest. It doesn't get calories from that food, and so it goes into an energy crisis. Chronic stress, poor sleep, lack of exercise, all can adversely affect the brain. Head injuries, infections, poor circulation, all of these are bad for the brain as well, naturally. And then, as we've said, there is this brain gut connection. So if your gut isn't working well, if you're not digesting your food well, if you have bacterial overgrowth, if you have leaky gut, the inflammation in your gut can travel through the vagus nerve to affect your brain. So what we want is for things to be in a normal state. So those microglia are in a resting supportive state. If there is any trauma or to the brain, they turn on. They have, inflammatory state, and then they turn off. But what we often see is those microglia get stuck on, which leads to an inflammatory state. So they're, releasing these toxic compounds that are meant to deal with the damage that's there and heal everything, but that those compounds actually start to affect the healthy cells in the brain. And then this activation starts to spread. And this is the microglial priming. So once you have some of the microglia being activated, then more and more get activated, creating this chain reaction. And then you're consuming a huge amount of glucose, and there's this widespread energy consumption causing brain fog. So the microglia, or excuse me, the mitochondria, similar to the cells of the brain, are subject to damage from inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, stress, and this can lead to poor concentration or fatigue or difficulty with certain tasks. And so there's a few different ways to support the mitochondria. Vitamins or essential nutrients kind of feed the mitochondria. The most well-known one is CoQ10. That's a cofactor in the electron transport chain, which is how the ATP is produced within the mitochondria. And so if you have more CoQ10, then you can produce more ATP. It doesn't directly improve the function of the mitochondria. It just gives it more of the ingredients it needs to do its job. There's alpha lipoic acid, magnesium, high quality B vitamins. All of these are basically cofactors for the mitochondria that help them function better. Regular exercise can increase the number of mitochondria that you produce. So especially in the muscles, but also in the brain. And so when you're exercising more, you're telling your body, we need more mitochondria, we need more energy. And so your body will upregulate the synthesis of these mitochondria. Adequate sleep, which is great for everything. Stress reduction is great for everything. Then also the intermittent fasting can also help the mitochondria. They're the powerhouse of the cell, so they're often on all the time, working hard. And if you give your body a break and you're consuming less calories for a long period of time, like with intermittent fasting, then that allows those mitochondria to repair and to work more efficiently. Another aspect of the brain functioning and of mitochondria functioning and of brain health that's adjacent is circulation and oxygen delivery. So your brain requires a huge amount of oxygen as well. Most of this oxygen is delivered through the blood, through the different arteries, like the carotid artery or the vertebral arteries that go up into the brain. And because of that, you want to ensure that you're getting plenty of oxygen to your brain. If you have anemia, that decreases the oxygen capacity, carrying capacity of the red blood cells. And so you want to remedy the anemia to make sure that's happening. If you're really having a hard time and you're older, you might want to get an angiogram of those arteries and see, are they clogged? Are they narrowed? Is there a reason that you're not getting adequate oxygen? And again, this comes back to exercise, hydration, deep breathing. All of these can help you increase the oxygen that's going to your brain. So, you know, these are kind of more severe conditions of a lack of oxygen, this cerebral hypoxia. Um, that you're basically not getting enough oxygen to your brain. Your brain's not able to function because it needs a high amount of oxygen, similar to the energy crisis in the brain. If this is happening, you may have signs of dizziness or lightheadedness, cold hands and feet, and you may feel better after you exercise. So, other factors that can impair oxygen to the brain are high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, sedentary behavior, smoking, poor posture. All of these are going to reduce the amount of oxygen that goes to your brain. So we've already mentioned the primary intervention here is exercise. That's going to improve circulation of blood and improve the delivery of oxygen to the brain. And then there's an ingredient we call nitric oxide. This is can be found in foods, but it's also found in supplements, and that's going to improve the blood flow to the brain, and then making sure that you're hydrated, making sure that you've got good posture, so you're not cutting off circulation to the brain through poor posture. And then sometimes can be helpful to do alternating hot and cold exposure. That can improve the circulation as well. So, if you haven't done any laboratory testing, it can be really helpful to do some laboratory testing to figure out what's going on in your brain. You can look for nutrient deficiencies, B vitamins, vitamin D, and iron, or anemia. You can look for signs of inflammation like C-reactive protein or homocysteine, or looking at food sensitivity tests. Can also be helpful to test your hormone function, your thyroid and adrenal, sex hormones. All of these are going to play a role in what's going on, and so having more information is always helpful. Also, with many of these things, it can be helpful to work with a healthcare provider. So you definitely want to track everything and work as a work as a team with your healthcare provider to ensure that what you're doing is going to provide the most benefit for you. So here are some ideas on energy pacing and cognitive load. So energy is limited, and so pacing your energy can help with mental crashes and burnout, not overdoing things. So some activities that can, require lots of energy or multitasking, emotional stress, complex tasks. So you really want to think about your day or your week and the energy demands that it requires, and schedule yourself in a way where you're not over asking more of your brain and your body than you have the energy for. So this may be taking extra breaks or scheduling tasks based on your energy levels, or batching different tasks. So you want to kind of come up with this energy budget that you have for your day, and then figure out how to maximize that energy budget. And then over time, you can kind of progressively increase the amount of stimulation or activities that you're doing as your body acclimates to that. So here's the general protocol. Here is, the foundational support that we talked about in the previous two modules, just creating that strong foundation, and then targeted support of the mitochondria with nutrients like CoQ10, and then maybe some more advanced interventions based on laboratory testing. So, Here's the key takeaways. Your brain uses a ton of energy and oxygen. Your mitochondria produces that energy. Inflammation and poor circulation can steal that energy. Your blood sugar is kind of the stability is the foundation for consistent energy. And with some of these interventions, you can start to recover and then progressively get better and better. Remember that consistency and patience are the key. So, although we're really focused on supporting the mitochondria, improving circulation to the brain to eliminate brain fog and fatigue, ultimately the long-term goal is to optimize your brain's energy production so that you have deeper focus, more mental stamina, and sustained clarity. So thank you so much for watching this lecture on how to support your mitochondria. I'm so glad you're here. And as usual, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the course and let us know how we can improve this course so that it can be the most useful for you.